She came as the black fiancée, yet the billionaire's family treated her like a maid. But this black woman didn't just endure. She exposed everything. Think you know how it ends, think again. Stay till the last second. The black Rolls-Royce pulled up to the estate's white marble steps with theatrical precision. As the chauffeur stepped out and opened the door with a slight bow, Janelle emerged like she'd rehearsed it 100 times. Her emerald green couture gown shimmered under the late morning sun, its hand-stitched crystals catching the light like stars trapped in silk. Each click of her crimson Louboutins on the marble echoed her resolve. On her left hand glistened a $500,000 cushion-cut sapphire engagement ring haloed in diamonds and set in platinum apiece that had once belonged to a duchess, now symbolizing her place in a billionaire legacy. In her right hand, she carried a perfectly wrapped gift box from Lafayette, swathed in ivory silk and finished with a golden bow. Inside was a rare vintage Hermes scarf meticulously chosen to match Evelyn Hale's favorite lipstick shade. It had taken Janelle weeks of research and quiet inquiries to get it just right. I rehearsed this arrival in my head 100 times, she thought. In none of them was I staff. She reached for the bell, but before her fingers could make contact, the heavy mahogany doors swung open. Evelyn Hale was already standing there. Tall, immaculate, unblinking, like a statue of privilege in a cashmere coat. Her silver hair was swept into a classic Kennedy bun, her neck adorned with a triple strand of pearls. Her gaze flicked over Janelle's figure with swift clinical efficiency. "My darling boy, Evelyn," cooed, embracing Grayson tightly. Then turning to Janelle, "You must be the fiancée." The pause before the word hung like frost in the air. There was no hug. No handshake. No congratulations. Grayson, hands in his pockets, gave a small nod. "This is Janelle." He didn't meet her eyes. Didn't reach for her hand. Didn't say "my future wife." As they stepped into the grand foyer, Janelle took in the white and gray marble floors, the carved wooden ceiling, the oil portraits of ancestors, with names etched in gold. Not a single black face among them. This was legacy built with gates and gatekeepers. "Let's get comfortable," Evelyn offered lightly, leading the way into the drawing room. There were only 2 chairs already occupied. Janelle stood unsure. She moved instinctively toward the edge of a chaise lounge. But before she could sit, Evelyn called out without turning, "Would you bring in the hors d'oeuvres, dear? They should be ready." Janelle froze. Grayson turned toward the window, saying nothing. Her heart sank. Celeste floated into the room, just then, tall platinum blonde, a vision in white blazer and soft silk. "Dom is chill," she smiled. "You know how to open it, without that awful popping sound. Mother hates that noise." Evelyn took a delicate sip of champagne and said almost as an afterthought, "Your fiancé has such a grounded presence." It's refreshing. Nobody asked Janelle how her journey was. Nobody inquired about her work or her life. It was as though she had entered the house as a silhouette. In the kitchen, there were no staff in sight. Just a silver tray sitting on a dark mahogany counter, half-prepared canapés arranged without precision, napkins unfolded in a heap. She rolled up her sleeves and set to work, smoothing the chaos into order. Her hands trembled slightly, but the muscle memory of planning investor events and running boardroom briefings steadied her. "This isn't welcoming," she thought. "This is hazing." When she returned with the tray, Celeste was mid-livestream. "Mom's taste is iconic," she said to her phone, tilting the camera to showcase the hors d'oeuvres, cutting Janelle out of the frame entirely. Evelyn picked up a canapé, never once glancing at Janelle. "You're a natural," she murmured. Behind her, a giant oil portrait loomed Evelyn's great-grandmother, seated in a velvet chair, her eyes painted with unnerving precision. From the angle, it looked as though she was staring directly at Janelle's hands. Grayson sat silently on the settee beside his mother. Not once did he reach for Janelle's hand or thank her or offer her a place by his side. Evelyn turned to him, her tone shifting slightly. "You'll speak at the gala. Yes, it's vital. The guests understand your direction." She then pivoted to Janelle with a gentle smile, sharpened like glass. "Elegance is essential. We expect clarity." Celeste chimed in, "You'll meet real legacy women. They've known each other since prep school." That was it. No welcome toast. No tour. No gesture that said she belonged. Only layers of instruction masquerading as conversation. In 2 days, they would be hosting a high-profile charity gala at the estate. The media would attend. Donors, politicians, investors, and the Hale family planned to formally introduce Janelle to society as their chosen heir's bride-to-be. But in this moment, standing there like an unpaid coordinator in a couture dress, Janelle felt more like a placeholder than a partner. She stepped back slightly, fingers brushing the folds of her gown. The diamond on her hand caught the chandelier's light. I was wearing a ring worth more than my apartment, she thought bitterly. And still, they handed me an apron. The chandelier above the long oak table glittered like a sky full of silent judgment. Janelle sat near the far end of the 18-seat dinner table, velvet-upholstered chairs flanking her on either side, the fine linen napkin across her lap untouched. On her left, a cousin of Grayson stared blankly at his consomme. To her right, an elderly great-aunt adjusted her brooch and said nothing at all. From the opposite end, Evelyn Hale rose slightly, lifting her baccarat flute as the violin quartet dipped into Vivaldi. Tradition, she said with grace, polished by decades of hosting, is grounding, especially when family is involved. She smiled and then turned slow, deliberate toward Janelle. Do you host formal dinners back home, or is that uncommon where you grew up? Janelle held her smile with the precision of someone threading a needle in an earthquake. I've hosted investor breakfasts and led boardroom receptions, she replied evenly. Not quite as formal, I suppose. From the side, a man with a velvet cravat murmured, she's very competent. Like the staff at our Aspen Lodge. The comment floated just loud enough to be heard and ignored at the same time. Janelle was asked to pass the vinaigrette refill, a carafe, fetch a second napkin. No one else was. She complied without flinching. She had done this before in conferences and meetings, in rooms where she was both guest and proof. She's practical, Evelyn added as a finishing touch, like a note of perfume. That's rare these days. Most girls are ornaments. Grayson chuckled lightly, not at the joke, but at the expectation of reaction. He didn't say a word in her defense. After dinner, Janelle caught his arm just outside the atrium. You didn't hear that she's like that with everyone, Grayson shrugged, hands in pockets. She doesn't mean anything by it. Janelle didn't blink. No, she meant every word. And you meant every silence. Later that night, she lay in bed, eyes wide open, the ornate ceiling above them, looking more like a cage than a home. Grayson leaned in to kiss her shoulder, but she turned slightly, making the gesture awkward. Why are you always neutral when I'm being diminished? She whispered. She's tough on everyone, he mumbled. It's just her way. Janelle didn't reply. She stared at the ceiling and in the silence began building emotional walls he would never see coming. The next morning, Celeste suggested a walk through the rose garden. It began gently enough, questions about the weather, the soil. But then Celeste shifted. Did your family go to college? She asked. Janelle smiled politely. Yes. My mother worked nights to help me graduate. State college, right? Celeste tilted her head. Cute. Janelle slowed her steps. Did you always plan to marry up? I built my own up, Janelle said, her voice quiet but sharp. Celeste gave a light, condescending laugh. But it helps having the Hale name now, doesn't it? Later over tea, Janelle sat stiffly in the parlor. The elderly black housekeeper poured her a cup, placing it gently on the saucer without a sound. As she turned away, she leaned in, barely audible. Don't let them shrink you, baby. That's their tactic. Janelle's hands trembled slightly around the porcelain. It was the only kindness she'd felt all day. Grayson led her to the library in the afternoon, saying she needed a break. The smell of leather bindings and old mahogany filled the room. But she wasn't alone. Evelyn was already there, lounging in an armchair, book in hand, reading glasses low on her nose. She looked up slowly. This family values discretion, Janelle, she said. And you announce yourself in every room. Janelle opened her mouth, then shut it. Evelyn flipped a page. Some lights blind, you know. That night, Celeste posted an Instagram story. It showed Evelyn, Grayson, a cousin, and a pair of childhood friends smiling beneath a chandelier. The caption read, "Elegance is knowing when to be invisible." Janelle wasn't in the frame. She hadn't even been asked. Back in their suite, Grayson removed his cufflinks, acting as if nothing had happened. Just survive this weekend, he muttered, not looking at her. Everything shifts after the gala. Janelle sat at the edge of the bed, the moonlight catching the sapphire on her engagement ring. She had once believed it was a promise, a shield, a milestone. Now it looked like a lock she didn't remember accepting. She turned to the mirror. In it, she saw not a bride-to-be, but a placeholder. A fixture. An image projected to appease a legacy she had never asked to join. The countdown to the gala ticked in her mind. 48 hours. That's all she had left to decide if she was willing to keep shrinking until she vanished. And in that reflection, the black fiancée of a billionaire saw the woman she swore she'd never become. The veranda shimmered with morning light linen-draped tables set like a luxury ad campaign. Hand-cut crystal glistened beside gold-plated flatware. Beneath a white canopy, guests in pastel and pearls sipped mimosas and savored smoked salmon and Benedicts prepared by a Michelin chef. But Janelle's focus was razor-sharp on survival, not the spread. She adjusted her posture, recalling her media training elbows, soft chin-lifted smile on cue. She had made it through the cold introductions, the veiled remarks, and even Celeste's cruel Instagram story. She just had to hold on a little longer. Then it came. "Didn't your grandfather own the Brooks Hotel chain?" A woman in a lavender Chanel suite asked, her voice deliberately loud enough for the entire table of 10. Janelle blinked. No. He was a postal worker. The woman's brows arched in mock confusion. "Oh, I must have misheard." Evelyn said, "Your legacy." The table quieted. The silver clinked against porcelain. Janelle smiled, but her hand clutched the mimosa flute so tightly condensation streaked down her wrist. Her heart pounded, but her face remained still. She excused herself with a poised smile and said she had a work call. No one stopped her. Inside the house, the moment her heels hit the marble floor, the mask cracked. She stormed past the portraits, the hall that now felt like a corridor of judgment, and into Grayson's study. The door creaked. Empty. She sat at his desk, hands trembling, and opened his laptop. It wasn't even locked. The folder was right there, intro package, Hail Review. She clicked. A PDF loaded with high-resolution photos, neat typography, and polished lies. Education, Vermont Academy, Brown University, family founders of boutique hotel chain in DC experience. UN internship, Fulbright Scholar, languages, fluent in French, conversational in Mandarin. And there her own face at last year's Women in Tech Summit, a photocropped and falsely captioned. Columbia alumna leads global panel on innovation. Janelle scrolled to the bottom. A section titled, Talking Points for Parents. Frame as strategic, polished. Avoid grassroots terminology. Say upwardly mobile, not from nothing. She froze. Eyes wide, mouth parted. A sharp chill spread across her spine. For a moment she couldn't hear anything. Not the faint sounds of brunch outside. Not her own breath. Just the rush of betrayal. Later that night, the confrontation was inevitable. She stood in their suite, the folder printed and clenched in her hand. "You rewrote me," she said, voice low but vibrating. Grayson was sitting on the edge of the bedshirt, unbuttoned, brows furrowed. "Janelle, did you fabricate my life, every detail? Did you think I wouldn't find out I didn't lie?" He said too quickly, then paused. "I adjusted things. I made it easier for them to see your brilliance. That's all." "Easier?" she echoed, blinking in disbelief. "You made me unrecognizable. They don't give second chances, Janelle. I needed them to say yes. Just once. Once they knew you, but they didn't know me," she snapped. "They met your edited version. Your sanitized, palatable rewrite. Not me." She turned away, gripping the edge of the dresser for balance. "My mother worked 2 jobs, she said, voice steadier now. "She stayed up late stitching my graduation gown from discount fabric because we couldn't afford the real thing. She embroidered my name into the hem by hand. Every letter was a battle she fought for me. And you erased her." Grayson stood, but she held up her hand. "When I was 15, my school told me to tone it down. I raised my hand too much. Spoke too confidently. They said I intimidated the boys. I've been shrinking myself ever since, just enough to get through doors that were never built for me. And now you," she exhaled sharply, "you repackaged me for a room full of people who wouldn't even let me stand as I am." Grayson approached, eyes soft. "I thought once they saw how incredible you were, we could fix the rest. But love built on a lie isn't love," she said. "It's leverage." He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. "Don't touch me with the hands that rewrote me." There was a long silence. She stared at the engagement ring, its sapphire, catching the dim light. Slowly, deliberately, she removed it. She didn't hand it to him. She simply held it in her palm, tight, the cold weight pressing into her skin like a brand. Then she said it this time aloud. "They'll only love me when I disappear." The air shifted. The room suddenly felt too small for the truth now filling it. The door creaked open. Celeste stood there half in shadow. She didn't smirk. She didn't gloat. She just looked at Janelle with something that resembled, "Was it pity you're not the first he's tried to adjust?" Celeste said quietly. "You're just the first not to let him." And with that, she turned and walked away. If this story hit you, tap like, then subscribe. The morning of the Hale Foundation, Gala arrived draped in golden light, but for Janelle, the day felt cold and clinical. She dressed carefully, an elegant black evening gown with a subtle slit, a low bun that showcased her neck, and the pearl earrings her mother had gifted her on the day she received her first promotion. They were her armor. Downstairs, the estate buzzed with activity. Staff scurried through hallways with trays and floral arrangements. In the grand salon, Evelyn stood at the center of a strategy huddle with the event coordinators. Her finger pointed toward the floor plan map on the mahogany table. Janelle will coordinate table assignments and manage catering flow, she instructed, without glancing at Janelle. She's extremely capable. Before Janelle could open her mouth, Celeste appeared beside her with a clipboard already in hand. "You're so good with lists. Just make sure we don't double-seat anyone this time," she chirped, her voice sugary and sharp. The clipboard was placed in Janelle's hand before she could refuse. She blinked. "I'm coordinating logistics." Evelyn turned to address the rest of the team. "Refer to Mrs. Brooks for anything table-related. She's been with the family long enough to understand our standards." The word "with" landed like a stone. Not part of, not belonging. Just with, like an extended contract. Janelle inhaled through her nose, lips pressed together. "I thought I was supposed to be getting ready for the gala." "This is about ownership," Evelyn replied smoothly. "You're stepping into a leadership role. Let's see that in action." The words weren't framed as a compliment. They were a command, a test, a dismissal. A charity donor with a bow tie 2 inches too wide approached, glass in hand. "Be a darling. Would you another pour of Chardonnay?" Janelle froze. She wasn't wearing a name tag. She wasn't in uniform. She was the fiancée. And yet, she took the glass without speaking, her fingers trembling slightly as she passed it to a nearby server. Later, she joined a small circle of biotech executives casually discussing AI's integration in healthcare. She waited for a lull before adding, "Actually, we just piloted a machine learning tool for patient diagnostics," that Celeste's voice interrupted. "Janelle, can you check the florals in the east corridor? There's a color mismatch Mother isn't happy with." "No, please." "No, would you mind?" "Just another task." Janelle nodded slowly, her throat dry. She walked away from the conversation, her comment trailing off like smoke in the wind. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor, each step heavier than the last. On her way back through the reception area, she caught a glimpse of Celeste live, streaming for her Instagram followers. "Legacy events are a reflection of legacy," people, she said into the camera, her smile curated and luminous. As the camera panned past the glittering guests, it deliberately skipped over Janelle. She wasn't part of the image. She wasn't part of the brand. In the guest bathroom, Janelle stood before the mirror. She took off the pearl earrings, laid them on the marble counter, and stared at her reflection. Her lipstick had faded. Her hair, though perfectly styled, now felt like a mask. She didn't recognize the woman in the glass. Just then, a young server walked in, black, maybe 22, in a pressed uniform. She halted. "Wait. Are you Janelle Brooks?" she whispered. "I saw you speak last year at the Tech Summit. You were incredible." Janelle's eyes softened. "I was a keynote," she said quietly. "Not here." There was a pause. The girl nodded, as if understanding a code unspoken. Then she left without another word. Janelle walked briskly back to the private wing, pushed open the door to Grayson's study, and shut it behind her. He looked up from a tray of cufflinks and cologne, surprised. "Hey. Everything okay?" Her hands were shaking now. "You said you loved me." "I do?" "Then why am I invisible in your house? Why do they treat me like I'm lucky to be invited to my own engagement?" He frowned, slowly approaching. Janelle, if I stand up to them now, I lose everything. My trust fund, my board seat, the succession plan. You know that? She stepped back, voice low and taut. Then, I was never your partner. I was your political shield. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is being assigned to coordinate floral arrangements, while your mother introduces me as capable instead of your fiancée. Grayson's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. The door creaked open behind them. Evelyn stood there, in her gala attire, champagne silk hair, pinned in soft waves, diamonds at her throat. They're waiting for the bride-to-be, she said coolly. Please don't delay the program. Janelle didn't move. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They'll only love me when I disappear. Then, with a long breath, she answered herself. Maybe that's exactly what I need to do. The garden had been transformed into a glittering palace under the stars. Rows of Chiavari chairs shimmered with gold accents, their backs catching the light from floating chandeliers strung across ancient oak trees. Tables draped in white linen and edged with gold embroidery lined both sides of a crimson carpet that led to the center stage. Photographers from Harper's Bazaar and the Financial Herald prowled the edges, and cameras from social platforms streamed the Hale family's gala live. It was the moment everything had been leading to, except for Janelle, the bride-to-be, who no longer felt like she belonged anywhere near the center. Evelyn took the stage first, every step perfectly timed. She stood tall beneath the logo of the Hale Foundation, glowing above her microphone poised. Tonight, she began, we honor a woman of quiet strength, grace, under pressure, and a fitting partner for our family's legacy. Mrs. Janelle Brooks. Polite applause followed polite but tepid. The kind that's required, not earned. Janelle stood at the edge of the red carpet, wrapped in a custom ivory gown, its couture lines hugging her form like a final performance costume. But her face, devoid of pride or joy, gave away the truth. She wasn't about to accept applause for playing a role she never auditioned for. The spotlight found her. She inhaled each breath, catching on memories being cropped out of family photos, corrected mid-sentence, mistaken for staff, rewritten into someone more acceptable. She walked slowly toward the stage, her heels silent against the red carpet, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. When she took the microphone, her hand trembled, but only for a moment. I came here expecting love, she began, her voice steady, deliberate. What I found was silence dressed in diamonds. A hush rippled across the garden. Janelle scanned the audience, not for validation, but for honesty. I was not seen. I was not celebrated. I was edited. Until I no longer recognized myself. Gasps. A clink of glass. In the back, a cameraman instinctively zoomed in. Without hesitation, Janelle reached for her hand, slid off the engagement ring that had once felt like a dream come true and now felt like a chain made of sapphire and silent. She placed it on a silver tray beside the champagne flutes. The sound it made, metal against metal, rang louder than any speech. For one beat, nothing happened. Then, from the far left table, a woman in a Navy power suit rose and began to clap. She was a black CEO, someone Janelle had once admired from afar. Then came another, a South Asian tech founder, then a journalist. The clapping spread soft at first, but rising in power like a slow-moving wave, reclaiming the shore. Celeste bowed her head. Evelyn froze her manicured smile, faltering lips, twitching, as though fighting the urge to command the night back into her control. Janelle turned to see Grayson standing, now pale and shaken. He stepped forward, reaching her on stage. His whisper was panicked, urgent. Let's talk. We can fix this. I'll walk away from it all. Janelle didn't blink. You had the chance to choose me. And you chose silence. Evelyn climbed the steps in heels that clicked like warning shots. Her voice, crisp as ever, sliced through the charged air. You're throwing away a kingdom, Miss Brooks. Janelle turned fully to face her. I was never your servant. And this was never a kingdom. It was a cage with golden wallpaper. She descended the steps, not running, not trembling, but walking with a grace that came not from breeding, but from truth. The orchestra, unsure of what to do, fumbled back into the Chopin piece they had abandoned mid-phrase. The music sounded fragile, now irrelevant. A young reporter tried to catch her as she passed the garden gates. Was that your final statement, Ms.? Brooks Janelle smiled softly, as if the question missed the entire point. That was my beginning. The next morning, her name was everywhere. A clip of her speech went viral, shared by women across industries and continents. Captions read she was supposed to say thank you. Instead, she told the truth. Within 8 hours, Not the Help and Rewritten Amore were trending across every major platform. Think pieces poured in. Vogue Black ran a full editorial under the headline, "She walked off the stage and into history." For the world, it was a viral moment. For Janelle, it was quiet, overdue liberation. That night, under the glow of the Brooklyn Bridge, she stood alone. The city's light reflected on the water as the wind played with the hem of her coat and tousled her curls. She touched the bare space on her ring finger, not with regret, but with peace. "They never meant to see me," she whispered to herself. "So I chose to be unforgettable." And she was. Not because of the gown, not because of the scandal, but because she refused to stay edited. 2 years later, the banners at the New York Grand Convention Hall fluttered above the entrance, embossed with logos from Fortune 500 sponsors and flanked by LED panels displaying keynote speakers. Inside the Forbes Next Gen Summit buzzed with energy. Young founders, innovators, professors, and activists filled every seat. At the center of it all stood Janelle Brooks, unbothered and unshaken. She wore a white tailored suit that carved power into every silhouette, black-soled heels that echoed her authority, and diamond stud earrings that gleamed like punctuation marks on a declaration. Her hair was swept into a low chignon, every strand exactly where it needed to be, not to impress, but because it pleased her. She stood behind the podium of her panel, power and integrity, reclaiming space without permission. Her voice was calm, but cutting, her message firm, but inclusive. The room leaned in. Many women, especially women of color, scribbled notes, not just on her strategies, but on her presence. It wasn't just a talk. It was a reclamation. At the far end of the room, Evelyn Hale arrived in muted pastel tones, flanked by Victoria polished blonde, composed. The kind of woman magazines once deemed fit for legacy. They watched from the back, unsure if they were welcome or if they ever had been. Evelyn's eyes met Janelle's from across the room. A pause. Then a quiet nod. After the panel ended, Evelyn approached. Her voice was soft, but her words carried weight. "Ms. Brooks, your panel was impressive." They walked the length of the hallway together, bathed in crosslight from the tall windows. It mirrored another walk, one from a lifetime ago, through the Hale family library. But this time, Janelle wasn't the one seeking approval. Evelyn spoke first, her gaze fixed ahead. "Grayson no longer creates. He signs documents, shakes hands, attends meetings. He smiles only when expected. The color's gone from his life." Janelle didn't flinch. "Sounds like a legacy built on obedience," she replied. "A beat?" Evelyn's steps slowed. "We chose quiet," she admitted. "We mistook it for strength. You made us uncomfortable, but you made us think. And that's what we needed." Her words wavered, not from weakness, but from awakening. Janelle nodded. "Your legacy was built to silence. I was never meant to protect it. I was born to disrupt it." They stopped near a marble column. Evelyn's eyes glistened, though her posture remained upright. "You weren't too much. We were too small. No fanfare, no cameras. Just a sentence that cracked open the past." Later that evening, Janelle stood backstage again, this time at a different podium with a different power. The spotlight above bathed her in warm light, and unlike before, it didn't blind her. It revealed her. As she walked on stage, her internal voice returned firm, resolute. "They said they'd love me if I disappeared. So I did. And became unforgettable." She scanned the audience. This wasn't someone else's estate. This was her arena. The applause was not polite, it was thunderous, genuine. Because this time, she wasn't a guest in someone else's story. She was the author. Later that night, back in her suite, Janelle leaned into her phone as the screen lit up with a FaceTime call. Her mother appeared, stirring evening tea in her modest kitchen. "I closed that chapter today," Janelle said, her voice steady. Her mother looked up, eyes gleaming. "I never raised you to fit into someone else's legacy. I raised you to build your own." She held something up to the camera, an old photograph slightly curled at the edges. In it, 7-year-old Janelle stood proudly in front of the small alteration shop where her mother once worked. Behind her, a handmade sign in the shop window read ALTERATIONSA Her mother smiled gently. Now the world's the one adjusting to you. Outside, the night had fallen over Manhattan, glittering and alive. Janelle stepped out of the convention center. As she passed through the crowd, people turned, not out of obligation, but reverence. A young black girl darted through the sea of guests, holding out a book and a pen. Mrs. Brooks, would you sign this? Janelle knelt, signed her name, then added one simple line beneath it, rewrite with truth. She walked away, heels silent on the carpet head high, every motion deliberate. The crowd parted for her, not as a courtesy, but as acknowledgement. The final frame stilled her back, lit by golden light shoulders, squared the city behind her like a crown. Above her figure, a single line appeared etched not just in words, but in legacy. Not every legacy is inherited. Some are forged. She came as a black woman introduced as his fiancée, yet the billionaire's family treated her like a maid. But instead of breaking, she rewrote the rules. This wasn't just a story about love, it was about power, silence, and self-worth. In a world that rewards obedience, she chose truth and became unforgettable. If this story moved you, don't leave without subscribing. There's more to come. Have you ever had to shrink so others could stay comfortable? What would you do if your truth was rewritten? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story that dares to speak louder.